For a long time, I avoided Ingmar Bergman's films because they have a sort of reputation of being very dreary and depressing. And then a few years ago, I watched Wild Strawberries, and while it had sad moments, there was a sort of bittersweet undercurrent to it. And I was like, oh, wait, there's some real heart and levity to this that I wasn't expecting with his reputation. So a few years later, this past year, I watched Autumn Sonata, and I'm like, oh wait, never mind. That is the most depressing, soul-crushing movie ever about familial trauma and regrets and hate, and it is just dark. It is just a dark, dark, sad movie. But I've always wanted to watch Scenes from a Marriage. I am a sucker for stuff about love. I was gonna call it a romance, but I don't think you could call it that. Maybe you can. Maybe romance can encompass just love. I don't know if that genre needs to be happy, but I love movies. Movies about love, about relationships, about people and how they interact. And Scenes from a Marriage has long been on my radar. There's a 3-hour version and there's a 5-hour version. The 5-hour is divided into episodes, and I always felt like I should just watch the long one. People seem divided. Some people say the short one's a little more concise, but a lot of people say the long one just gives you more time to sit with the characters. And that it did. I want to do some takeaways from this movie. Now, this movie's been out for, I call it a movie. I watched the series version, but it's just a long movie. But this movie's been out for 50 years. People have done much better, more eloquent thought on the thematics and the dynamics than I will probably do here. But I'll just share with some of the emotional reactions I had to the movie. Firstly, speaking of it being out for 50 years, it feels as relevant and brutal and piercing as ever when it comes to depicting relationships and regret and how we bring each other down, how we let our bad moods become bad days and become bad weeks and become a whole bad life. And I feel like that it maybe just speaks to how human connection and love has been wrought with conflict and despair since the beginning of time. But there is something a little modern to it too about, the work-life balance and feeling at peace away from home and wrestling with that thought. And then a lot of affairs. I don't know what's going on in Sweden. The handling of affairs was so casual in this. Maybe that's just once you get in your 40s and 50s, it's like, fuck it, nothing matters. But yeah, a lot of affairs in this movie. People just having people on the side. And, that's probably part of life too. But it just seems so casual. But regardless, this is all to say this movie is not a happy look at love and relationships. It's a realistic look, and happiness creeps in, and I think that's a good way to put it. The happiness creeps in throughout this series. It doesn't exactly stay long. There's this feeling of push and pull. There's a chaos in the relationship that's depicted between, what are their names in the movie? I know Liv Ullmann is the lead actress, and she's incredible. Forget the guy's name, but they're both Eric Johansson, something, I don't know. But they're both incredible. Liv Ullmann, between this and Autumn Sonata, is just one of the best actresses of all time. Just her ability to wear an emotion on her face and switch on a dime when somebody says something that just cuts to her heart. She acts that cut to your heart so well, and I feel like that's such a hard little moment to capture as a performer. And yeah, this is not a happy series. I'm going to keep saying movie series. I don't know what to call it. There's a movie version too. But and I assume it's not happy. Just I doubt they cut out all the sad stuff, because this is probably 4.5 hours of sad stuff with 30 minutes of calm before the storm. And that's what this is. It's this sort of doomed relationship feeling when the good and the bad necessitate one another. The good is happening so we could forget the bad, and the bad happens because we are forgetting. That sort of endless cycle. It's like we are avoiding the truth. There's the truth again. Let's avoid it. And you see it play throughout this whole series. And it really is just dour. I mean, episode 3 is when a big plot, I'll try to avoid spoilers, but a big plot point happens that divides them. And from there on out, it's just dark after dark after dark, and it comes around to almost a bittersweet ending. And this was a funny little note to me, because I'm like, I just watched 5 episodes of sheer depression, and then this ending is sort of giving you a little nugget of something. It's not fully sweet, and they say some of the saddest things I've ever heard written, but nonetheless, there is a feeling that it's like, let's put this all behind us. But then you reflect and you're like, what is this all? How can you truly put everything behind you, your history with somebody, or does that follow you forever? And then these ruminations on life are sprinkled throughout the series. There's a really beautiful sequence where Liv Ullmann's character goes on and reads a journal she wrote about her life and her childhood and all this stuff that led her to be who she is, and this person that doesn't feel like herself. And while she reads it, her husband falls asleep, and you see it coming from a mile away, because they sort of cut away to like stills and images. It sort of becomes a slideshow. Very cool little transition there. But yeah, you see it coming from a mile away that the husband will fall asleep when it cuts back to them. But it is so sad, and then there's a moment where he wakes up and he's so immediately apologetic, like, I'm sorry I fell asleep. You weren't boring me. I'm just tired. And this constant need to like, I don't know, care for your person, even though you're doing such a bad job, is illustrated so well in that moment. And be there for somebody you care about, even though you don't care about yourself. And the husband is such a miserable piece of shit in a lot of ways. He drags everything down and puts this woman through hell. And to what end? What does she get? And she has a lot of moments where she's like, why do I love you? Why do I go through this? And this is all to say, I could dissect this forever because it's such a rich thing. And what's amazing about this series is it's all done in almost single scenes. Each hour episode is like a single moment between this couple, just like, and you sit in it. It's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes of just a conversation. Something gets brought up and dissected, and it feels so real. It feels like those nights that just never end with a partner, where a problem is brought up and you get into this cyclical nightmare trap of trying to figure it out while trying to care for the other person, while trying to take the space you need. And it captures that so well, while also like illustrating just this really like horrible dynamic that comes with not understanding the world and yourself, and then throwing that version of yourself at a person. That leads to some of the most heartbreak in this goddamn world. This is all to say, because it's these simple conversations, usually in pretty drab, normal apartments. You know, they didn't do anything too lavish with the production design. You're just in normal houses, normal cottages, hotel rooms, and they just look so plain. And the cinematography, you know, it's very locked off. Everything's on a tripod. It's very like blocked. But sometimes it'll hold on one conversation, one shot for like 10 minutes, which is just a few moments of blocking in between. And sometimes you don't even realize, like, oh man, this whole conversation has been like a 10-minute take. And it's just so simply and effectively done. And that's the second half of this video. I'll get out of the sad trauma and just get into the technical stuff, which is this movie. And I love when I see a movie like this illustrates so well how much you can do with so little. You know, like every single movie I made last year had more locations, more actors, more props, more I don't even know, conflict, more like external conflict than any of this 5-hour movie had. You know, this movie's just two actors, simple locations, and seeing that, you realize the power of simplicity and how much you can do. This movie does not need to cost anything if you make it yourself. You know, get 2 actors you like collaborating with, And you can make a relationship drama like this. You could have great conversations and capture them, you know, whether you write it or find it in the acting with your collaborators. You can make something like this so simply, you know. Obviously Ingmar Bergman's a genius. Obviously the two actors are incredible, but that doesn't mean you can't be a genius. It doesn't mean you can't work with incredible people. So many people have incredible talent inside them that is just waiting to be pulled out, and you just need the confidence as a director to see their strengths and see where you work well together. And this is all to say, you can make scenes from a marriage. It's one of those delightful movies that's one of the most like deeply affecting of all time, but it's not because of the money. It's not because of the production. It's not because of this or that. It's just because of the truth and the sincerity and the confidence with which this team of people executed this thing. And you can achieve that. And I think that's a beautiful thought. I spent the whole movie feeling inspired because I'm like, oh, I want to make something like this. I've done countless movies that are just people talking, but nonetheless, I'm like, I want to like explore two characters and their problems so deeply as this movie did. And maybe I will, maybe I won't, but just that feeling of I want to do this because it's so accessible. I'm looking at this movie and I can see how it's done. That's a really cool feeling to be given by any movie. You know, you don't get that feeling by watching something that costs millions and millions of dollars because you know, it's so out of reach, so intangible. But this movie is so tangible in every way. And if you just need a great example of how good characters and solid writing and the faith in the emotions of what you're telling, if you just need a good example of that and how that can carry a movie, this is a great thing to watch. It's essentially a 101 class in human relations and how sad and miserable life can be. Maybe a cautionary tale, or maybe it leaves it sort of ambiguous how inevitable this dissatisfaction it presents is. You know, there's really like a feeling of, are we always too late? Have we already, from the get-go, have we lost? And this is why Swedish people are fucked up for making this movie. But specifically Ingmar Bergman. And fuck you, dude. You made me reflect. I wasn't trying to reflect. I was trying to just exist. Not really. I like reflecting. And I like movies. I love movies. I ran out of stuff to say. I love you guys. I hope this was an interesting little something. Have a nice day.